Diolch Llywydd. Mae'r byd yn newid, mae'r economi yn newid efo fo, ac un newid ydy bod yr economi wybodaeth yn dod yn fwy a mwy pwysig, ac yn hynny o beth mae gwariant ar ymchwil a datblygu yn mynd i fod yn dod yn bwysicach. Dyna sydd wedi greu syniadau newydd, dyfeisiadau newydd fydd yn sail i genhedlaeth newydd o fus nesaf. All y gweinidog roi diweddariad i ni ar wariant R&D o fewn cyllideb Llywodraeth Cymru?
Certainly, I will seek to provide you with some concrete figures as to our expenditure in R&D. But one of the concerns that we have had in recent times is, of course, the impact on leaving the European Union on our capacity in R&D. We've been looking very closely at the Reid report in order to ensure that we do have the maximum profile, if you like, in terms of ensuring that Wales is seen as a great destination for R&D, an environment where Welsh Government is supportive, but also an environment where academics are enabled to thrive in an environment which very much promotes the work that they do.
For that response, and I certainly also share the concern about the effects of leaving the European Union on future R&D funding in Wales. R&D funding comes from many different sources, of course. Business is by far the biggest source of funding, but let me look at higher education. Recent figures show UK higher education R&D spend in total at around £6.5 billion. Break that down, we see spend per person in Wales to be £86. In London and the home counties of England, it's £275 per head. Almost 60% of the total R&D spend in higher education is spent in the southeast of England. Now, universities themselves, of course, draw in that R&D funding themselves, but it would be wrong to suggest that Welsh Government couldn't be influential in seeing how much more money we could draw into Wales. Now, much of the current UK pool of R&D funding is drawn into what's known as the Golden Triangle between Oxford and Cambridge and the London universities, and because of their track record in R&D, they're able to beat off much of the competition and claim a lion's share of funding. But does the Minister agree with me that it's time now that Welsh Government really starts to make the case for creating a Welsh pool, a protected Welsh pool of R&D funding into which our universities can apply for funding in order to increase expenditure in this sector in Wales?
Well, you clearly raise an extremely important point, and around £750 million was spent on R&D in Wales in 2017, so that's the latest year for which we have figures, and that's an increase of 4.6 compared to the previous year, and that effectively now matches the rate of the increase in R&D spending across the UK. We've accepted the first recommendation of the Reid review, which is to strengthen our position in London through the office that we have there, and that's something which is currently being undertaken. But of course, we've both referred to the EU Structural Funds programme period, and during that we've invested £340 million, and that represents 20% of all EU structural funds allocated to Wales, and it continues to play a vital role in growing the Welsh economy and growing Welsh expertise. So certainly I would be keen to explore what we would do were the UK Government to come through on its guarantee for EU funding, and clearly there are discussions ongoing there which are causing some concern, not least about the exchange rate to which the UK Government intends to pass on funding to us. But there would be discussions, I think, for me to have alongside my colleague.
Referring back to your first words, I admire your positivity in saying that the increase in R&D spending in Wales is matching the increase in other parts of the UK. Let me try to illustrate it. Wales has increased that much from that point, whereas the rest of the UK has increased that much from a point up there. We need to be aiming for parity with other parts of the UK. Let's look elsewhere. Let's look at direct government R&D spend in Wales. In 2016, of the £2.2 billion spent on research and development by UK government, £54 per person was spent in London and the home counties, just £5 per person was spent in Wales. And you, as Finance Minister, aren't jumping up and down about this every single day. Isn't this Just a further example, yes, of the Conservative government at a UK level not investing in Wales as we believe on these benches that they should, but also your government consistently again failing to make the case for Wales's share of R&D funding, and that's to the detriment of Wales and to jobs in Wales.
Well, obviously I would disagree, and I'm always interested that whenever you seek to make a comparison, it's always with London and the home counties, which isn't necessarily a well-recognised comparison with Wales. Spending on R&D is low in Wales, as it is across the UK in OECD terms, so it's a challenge that we are facing right across the UK, and the level of R&D funding in any relatively small economy such as Wales is influenced greatly by a small number of major projects commencing or ending, and that means that any one year's results should be interpreted cautiously.